Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book from Oxford University Press. This is an important book and one that I found fascinating, having been to different parts of the world and seen some of the problems involved with people who are the subject of this book. It's called the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and I've specifically been interested in those peoples in Canada, hence the nice flag at the back here. But obviously it extends to all people involved, and I do think this is a very important book. It's a commentary. It's been edited by two people, Jessie, Hohmann and Mark Weller, and it comes from OUP's Oxford Commentaries on International Law. Very much an international law book for anybody involved in that area of both practice and academic interest. Elizabeth and I have given it a title, Authoritative and Timely Commentary on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and Elizabeth was the lead writer. Here's the book anyway. Lovely front cover. There's the spine. There's nothing on the back. It's a heavy book. It's a hardback, of course. Now, the book at the back, 600 odd pages. There's the index. The index is by page numbering. It's quite a detailed index, actually. I have to say, I thought it was very helpful. Just getting to the front of it there, you can see the front bit, and you can see there's quite a lot of footnoting, and you can just see it at the bottom there. Obviously there's paragraph numbering. Again, you can see how it is as we go through the book. If you go to the front of the book, you can see there's the front page there, and then you've got, that's the main front page itself, introducing the book. It's quite a heavy book, actually. Then there's the detailed blurb, and then there's a dedication, which I should just show you there. Now, the content section, you can see structured, quite detailed, quite helpful. You can see parts, the various part numbers. There are in fact 6 parts and 19 chapters in total, with the index at the back. Then you've got tables of cases, international, then split into the various jurisdictions. And then after that you've got legislation, again actually separated out here by things like international instruments and so forth. And then you've got, again, various treaties and quite a lot of information by country. Then, of course, the list of abbreviations, always important in international law. In fact, becoming more so because of the huge number of abbreviations that we now use. Obviously, the computer hasn't helped. This is basically a compilation with a lot of people assisting the two editors, and so there's a list of contributors, a large number of them, which you can see going all the way through. Then there's an introduction which is worth reading from the two editors, and as you can see there is the footnoting all the way through. You can see some of the footnoting is quite substantial. Very interesting book. Now let's just go through it. And this is what we basically say. Most international lawyers, especially those dealing with human rights issues, will be aware of UNDRIP, UNDRIP. I would be very careful about calling it that. I know obviously some people will for various reasons, but it's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP. Okay, following what you might call what is a consultation period of at least a quarter of a century, the declaration was finally adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2007. And as is the case with anything involving the UN, it takes a long time. The point is, at least there's been a bit of a discussion about it, and I think it's something that is of direct relevance to a lot of people, both political, on the diplomatic front, and of course legal. The vote, of course, at the General Assembly was decisive. 144 countries in favour, yet the declaration with its 46 articles engendered a fair amount of controversy and mixed reactions, ranging from euphoria to bemusement to disquiet, depression and dismay. And of course that's not to be surprised at because of the difficult emotions that this stirs up. And to ferret out the details, you couldn't do better than reading through this book. It's been published recently by OUP as part of their Commentaries, Oxford Commentaries, I do apologise, on international law series. And this title brings together in one convenient volume a range of informed commentary and in-depth analysis from some 24 expert contributors on the Declaration itself and its wider implications, including more than a few consequences, some of which of course were unintended. Certainly, we think, a large sampling is revealed of the wide variety of comments, criticisms and controversies that have emerged since the Declaration was adopted. Let me identify this point. A key problem is the fact that the Declaration does not define Indigenous peoples, possibly since the term seems to defy definition and can, of course, immediately connote or arise emotions and difficulties. Possibly there's an inevitability about this, because the problem here is in implementing, enforcing the obligations of states which require recognition of people as indigenous. Again, how do you actually define that? And it's pointed out nonetheless that both Articles 9 and 33 of the Declaration suggest that self-identification is the main criterion for determining indigeneity, and I think that's the correct way to call it, because that's really what we're talking about. In other words, a term which is customarily capitalised, in case you're wondering. I've actually not capitalised it. I've tried not to, because obviously it doesn't flow so well and it doesn't fit in, sadly, with some of the computer systems when I'm uploading it on the system. But that's a minor matter. Also, I think notable is Article 33, which I've just referred to, which asserts the right of Indigenous peoples to determine their own membership. Then there's Article 36, which stresses the right of Indigenous communities divided by international borders to cross such borders at will in order to maintain cross-border relationships, including activities for spiritual, cultural, political, economic and social purposes with their own members as well as other peoples across the borders. And not surprisingly, therefore, considerable argument remains as to whether these, as well as a number of other measures in the Declaration, are at all feasible or practical to implement, which for the most part they aren't, even if this UN Declaration was binding, which of course it isn't. And it's not unfair to say, though, that the Declaration does provide valuable guidance in these diverse and complex matters, its overall aim being to right many of the wrongs suffered by Indigenous peoples. Now, the two editors, Jessie, Hohmann and Mark Weller, have presided over an important book, we feel, which will make a significant contribution to the debate on what is fundamentally an important human rights issue. And again, of course, of an international flavour. Also, I think it's important to note it's very readable and carefully structured as a work of reference, and it contains ample research resources as well as an extensive table of cases and of legislation. And the date of publication is cited at the 22nd of May 2018. Now let's just have one last look at the book. There it is. You can see it there. There's the spine. Just opening it in the middle. Equality and non-discrimination. There we go, right in the middle. You can see the structure, main text all the way through, and quite a lot of footnoting. And as I mentioned, there is a very useful index at the back. Well, thank you very much to Hohmann and Weller for producing this work, and of course to OUP for including it in their Oxford Commentaries on international law. I think this is an important work, and one that I hopefully will be built upon in the next few years, because the rights and the difficulties of Indigenous peoples are not going to go away, and we need to have a very well thought out approach as to what we're going to do in the longer term. Thank you to everybody concerned, the contributors, and of course to the two editors and OUP. Bye-bye.